The following may contain language and subject matter not appropriate for all audiences.
Wow, maybe you should be doing like movie trailers.
Now give me a Slim Jim. Hello everyone. Thank you once again for joining us here on the Low Fact Podcast. Dave and Matt.
So,
Fumbling our way through anger.
never goes how I think it's going to go.
Wow. So yesterday you were talking about we were starting to get to the meat of anger. Mm-hmm. In our space program analogy, we have finally hit the Apollo program.
And you talked about where it manifests from.
Sure. So anger. What were you saying about anger? Oh, like it's generally it's generally concluded or put forth as something that is negative.
It's frowned upon.
Yeah, and I believe that's true, but the frowned upon part, you're really skipping from the beneficial stages, and you're really talking about just anger bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that gives a great disservice to people, especially young boys and young men, because I'm not saying anger good. I'm saying anger need to be controlled, need to be utilized.
But how do you...
I don't know why I'm talking like a damn caveman.
So you flip it. Do you flip it? Because I've heard people have theories about anger where they say that you can flip it into concentration or flip it into being focused around things. So you can take the energy of anger and turn that into being very focused about things.
I agree with that conclusion, and I think the only thing that I would change about your characterization would not be flip, but channel.
Okay.
So
it's not a translation.
Yeah, anger doesn't. You can't turn anger magically into something else. You know, if you're a chemist.
So it's not a transformation.
Yeah, if you're a chemist, then you're like Lavoisier.
Okay.
He was a scientist in France just before the French Revolution. I think he ended up being killed in the Terror because he was a tax collector. But he set up a lot of scientific experiments, mostly in chemistry, and he concluded that in any chemical reaction, nothing is either gained or lost.
His name was what now? Lavoisier?
Lavoisier.
I'm like, Courvoisier?
That was his cousin, who just liked to sit there and drink all day.
Okay.
So with your assessment or your statement, I don't think anger is flipped. It's not turned into something else. It's not alchemy, but anger is channeled. You can channel your anger into what we would consider positive things, like more concentration, more focus, right? Because you can be paralyzed by anger, just like you can be paralyzed by fear, paralyzed by, fear was the only thing I had.
Horror, that's fear.
Yeah, fear was the only thing I had, and when I tried to expand, it didn't work. So you can channel your anger, and that is something that needs to be. I don't know if it's not taught anymore, but I believe that is a thing, a hole in the education, and. I don't expect schools to do this. I'm not talking about, how to channel your anger. I'm talking about...
It's kind of like anger management, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think that's something that people need to be exposed to just in life, through their families, through the community. Because, as you know, I believe that society is really a kind of a trade-off. If you decide to live in a society, live in groups, then you have to you're trading off stuff. You're not putting as much importance on sheer talent and ability, because if ability and talent took precedence over other things, over other desired outcomes in a society, then if you focus just on talent and ability, then a lot of the stuff that's good in society would have to be discarded, which I'm not prepared to say is a good.
Yeah.
And I'm not prepared to, I believe that family is very important. I believe that friends and all that are very important to help, live a decent or comfortable or good life. Because, if you just sit there and say everything hinges on your talent, on your abilities, then a lot of the stuff that we hold
Sacrosanct.
thank you, in a society would have to be thrown out the window. Like, family wouldn't matter as much, friends wouldn't matter as much. And I think that those things, it is more important, that those bonds are more important than your particular success. Because if you only focused on an individual's talents or whatever, then that would lead to a pretty unfulfilling life. But back to the anger.
So how do you
thing,
channel it?
Well,
I mean, for a start, you got to have it under control.
Well, you have to learn. You have to learn how to control those things. And that's where.
I mean, it's a strong emotion.
Sure, and that's where the differences between men and women kind of manifest itself. I don't ever remember when I was a young boy,
Young whippersnapper.
hearing people admonish girls about their anger, about their aggressiveness.
Mm.
But as a young boy, the men around me in society, father, teachers, friends of family, were always, trying to impress upon me that,
That's not how you express yourself.
well, you need this, you can't go around doing, if you're unhappy, you can't go around hitting people. That's not acceptable. I mean, I think sports came out as a way to channel anger.
That actually makes sense. But what about passive aggression, though? Like, when I say passive aggression, I don't mean the traditional definition of passive aggressive. I mean my mother's definition of passive aggression, which is smashing some inanimate object, as opposed to smashing a person.
In that form, I think passive aggression is actually someone without anyone else's help trying to channel their anger in a way that doesn't manifest itself as negative.
You remember that video of the garbage guy with the letterbox?
No.
Basically, the letterbox was kind of getting in his way, and then he got caught up on the letterbox, and then he just ended up like, he pulls the letterbox out of the ground, smashes it like 5 or 6 times, and then throws it into the back of the garbage truck. And of course, I think he got fired, but he was obviously having a very, very bad day, and he took out his aggression on the mailbox.
Which was better than taking out the aggression on a person, but it was still
Somebody else's property.
It was still not an accepted way to channel the frustration and anger.
No.
And how do you learn to channel that frustration and anger? I mean, it has to be taught.
So you have to learn to control your emotions.
Yeah. That's part of living in a society. Because if you don't control your emotions and can run around doing whatever you like, then you're really just a child.
Well, shouldn't everybody have to do that?
I didn't say everybody didn't have to do that.
No, but if we're going to be fair about it, then not only men should be controlling their anger, but women should have to control their anger too.
Right, but that's where my statement from a couple of days ago comes from, where I don't think women have to deal with anger as much as men do.
Because there isn't a consequence?
No, because I think they have less testosterone, which is what I think kind of fuels anger.
I don't know, man. The jury is out for me on that, because I personally think that women can be very angry, and I've experienced that with women, that anger, and I'm like, if they have less testosterone, how come they're angry?
Well,
I mean, it's this anger around being questioned, right?
Well, you're kind of mixing stuff up there. You're taking my statement about men having to deal with anger more than women to mean women don't have, which is not what I said. Women have anger too, but if in a given day, I believe that it's more like this. In a given day, 1,000 things will make a guy angry. Whereas for a woman, it might only be 100.
Yeah.
Or 500, depending, or, maybe, but, yeah, okay, there might be women that are angry just as often as men are.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I'm not talking about the extremes. You know,
Right.
that's like the argument for when people say, "Oh, men generally have more body strength, upper body strength than women," and then someone saying, "Oh, well, I know this woman that can do just as many pull-ups as a dude." I'm like, well, I didn't say that.
That there wasn't a woman that could.
Right. And to sit there and try to use one example to obliterate an argument,
Well,
then I would say, then why don't we just make sports unisex? All sports.
well, I'm curious as to, okay, so testosterone is definitely,
I don't know. These are my personal views.
right. Well, I'm just curious to know where it comes from, what makes people angry.
Let's talk about that tomorrow.
Okay.
Tune in to find out whether or not we ever decide where anger comes from.